Between the Covers, the show for readers and writers and lovers of books. I'm Stephanie, and I'm a publisher at Red Penguin Books. We're a publishing company that works with authors of all types and genres. So whether you have a book all ready to be published, maybe 200 sheets of loose leaf shoved in a drawer, or perhaps the ideas are still stuck in your head, please visit redpenguinbooks.com and unleash your inner author. I am so thrilled to be joined today by three authors who have certainly unleashed themselves, and their stories and their inspirations are just absolutely amazing. Our first author, Robert Gibson, is joining us from Barbados, and Make It Rain is quite the story. I think you're going to be interested in hearing all about it. Richard Marks is an inspirational motivational speaker, and his Rise to the Sun, 7 Footsteps and 7 Prayers for Getting Out of Hell. It's not just about the prayers and the footsteps. There's plenty of art and poetry, and you will just love meeting Richard. And finally, Lisa Strahs-Lorenc is speaking about families moving on from pancreatic cancer. Lisa published a book 10 years ago when her husband passed away from pancreatic cancer. And now, after interviewing those same families who were in her original book 10 years later, to see how they've moved on. What a story of human resilience. So I thank you so much for joining us. Now on with the show. I am so delighted to be joined today by author Robert Gibson. Robert is hailing from Barbados, so I'm a little jealous of the weather today in Barbados. But Robert is the author of Make It Rain, which is a little play on words you'll hear all about. He's also the author of many other books, and you can visit him at passionpoet.com. And boy, does he have some stories about that. Robert, thank you for joining us.
Hi, yes, thank you for having me.
Oh, delighted to have you. And I'm sure it's beautiful down in Barbados right now, isn't it?
Oh, yes, it's very, very beautiful. We've had a couple inches of rain over the last couple of days, but today is nice, hot, and very, very, very beautiful outside. If I were at my desk upstairs, I'd do a flash of my phone and you'd actually see outside my window right now. I would want to get you all very, very jealous.
It's very funny because just before we started, Richard made me very jealous with his view out his window. I don't have anything good out my window, so I'm very jealous of both of you. So tell us a little bit about how you got started writing, and then tell us about Make It Rain.
Okay, well, let's think about Golden Girls. When they say when Sophie says, "Picture it, 1916." Anyway, right. My name is Robert Gibson. My stage name is the Passion Poet, and the reason for that is because I'm passionate about everything I do, including writing and especially words. I've been a poet since the age of 14 years old, writing from before then, but I got introduced to poetry at 14. I got introduced to poetry because of my English teacher. And he introduced me to poetry, and I said, I might be able to do this. Went home and wrote a poem for the first time ever. It was called The Student's Lament, and it was for me to insult, and it was a jovial piece where I insulted everybody from the headmistress all the way down to the janitor.
Oh my gosh.
It was just a fun piece to do based on what I was learning at school at the time. And I, typical story. Next day, I carried it and shyly gave it to my teacher, carried it to school, shyly gave it to my teacher, and he made me read it to the class.
You were 14 for this, huh?
Yes, 14 years old. So I read it to the class, all scared, but everybody loved it. They laughed and everybody was enjoying it. And that piqued my interest, and I started writing from then. So from 14 till now, I've been writing. And at 14 years old, I was not writing the type of books and the type of poetry that I write now. I am classified mostly as an erotic writer, but Yes, I started at that point at 14.
But you weren't an erotic writer at 14, were you?
Oh, no, 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 no. No, that happened about 19, 20, 21.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So tell us a little bit about Make It Rain. I love the play on words here.
Okay, well, make it rain. First things first. Make It Rain is my first novel. It is based in Barbados, with Barbadian characters, Barbadian scenes, where let's say it is a book about maturation, about growing up. I say it's a book about growing up. It's a book about making mature choices.
Mm.
Okay. Um, it is based on solely on two people, mainly on two people. Raine, who is a spoken word artist, he's a performance poet, and Jasmine. Now, Raine is a performance poet of erotic writing, and I usually have to make the caveat: he is not me.
They say that everyone writes about themselves.
Right? No, no, no. He's not me. I don't treat women how he treats women in that book. I don't treat women like that. But he is a person who he loves the stage, but he also loves women, and therefore, what happens with him is that he some people who have fame ends up like sleeping with his groupies, that kind of thing.
Right,
So
right.
he sleeps with Jasmine and gets her pregnant, and then the story unfolds about what happens next.
And you don't want to give it away. Now, you've written several books. Are they all in a series with this, or are they all different?
Well, they're all different because they're all poetry. This is the first book of actual novel that was written. So before, I've written erotic, seduction, offering, passion, the Gemini Project. 1, 2, 3, and Quotes of Passion. Quotes of Passion. So all of those are books of poetry.
Gotcha.
And I decided, because poetry is a genre that does not sell well very often when it comes to actual books. People like poetry to be experienced, so they like to go to a poetry club and hear poetry. But you don't actually, you have to be a lover of a book to go and buy a book of poetry, or somebody who is focusing on supporting the author or the poet.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided, after a couple of years, because I wrote erotic, my first one, in 2014. Make It Rain was released actually in 2017.
Okay.
So when I was trying to get these books sold, people didn't want to buy books. So I said, okay, you want a story? I will give you a story. And so Make It Rain is a book centered around sex, lies, betrayal, and poetry.
All right. Sex, lives, betrayal, and poetry.
Yep.
We can't say no to that. And that's why the name Passion Poet, huh?
Yes. I'm passionate about everything I do, and I'm passionate about women and words. So yeah.
Now, what made you write either this book or even any of the books if you're not patterning off after you? Like what inspired this particular genre or the storylines if they're not at least semi-autobiographical?
Okay, I lied a little. Rain does have Rain does have some of my characteristics, but to be honest, I'll give you the story of how this book was written or why
Okay.
it started. People have been, over the years, people were telling me they wanted me to write a novel. And I said over the years, I am a poet. I think in verse. I don't write novels. However, I decided to try a thing, as we say here in Barbados, and I went to the 90-day novel. I bought the 90-day novel on Amazon. That is a workbook by Alan Watts, I believe his name is.
Yes, of
And
course.
it helps you to go through learning how to write a novel. I liked it because it doesn't just drop you straight into writing. It basically helps you to build the world before you actually touch start to write.
Right.
So what happened after all of that, to cut a long story short, I created Raine, the main character. I created Jasmine, the female character. Then I realized I watched them have sex in my head. And I'm like, oh shit, I need to write this down. I'm like, oh, I need to write this down, And that's how that book started. Basically, I watched them have sex in my head, and then I wondered what happens next, and then I let them go, basically, and they wrote this story for me.
Okay, Robert, I have heard people say that they just let their characters go, and once you just kind of let your characters do their own thing, they just do their own thing. But boy, yours were doing their own thing. So you honestly did not know that's where it was going to go when you started?
Listen to me. I had one goal. And like I said, when I started, I knew that I wanted the main character to get to a place where he had to question his life choices. Okay. That was my only goal. Okay? So I had no idea how I was going to get there. And I literally told my characters, as long as you get to this point, I don't care what you do. And I'll give us basically what happened one time. I'll give us a short snippet. Like, Raine was in a nightclub. I knew he was gonna have sex with somebody in that nightclub. I did not know who. and there was a pretty girl there in that nightclub, and I was sure this was the one he was gonna have sex with. He proved me wrong. He danced with her once and was done. And I was like, wait, what? Then Jasmine came into the picture, actually no, this was in a different scene. Another girl came into the picture, and he danced with her like 2, 3, 4 songs back to back. And then on top of that, then they decided to go and bang in the bathroom. And I'm like, that wasn't in my plan. This wasn't what you were supposed to be doing. But they did what they did.
You are the epitome of when writers of fiction say that they are pantsers, that they are flying by the seat of their pants.
It's true.
As opposed to a planner or a plotter. That's
no.
You.
I do not have an outline. I do not have an outline. No. I have a general idea of things, but basically I paint my characters into a plot, into a hole, into a corner, and then I have to figure out how to get them out. I'm like, oh, okay, how do I get him out of here? No.
Unbelievable. I have to ask you now, before we started, you mentioned that you have a new business, and I want to hear how this new business, I want to hear all about it, especially because it has to do with writing, but how that works for someone who is a pantser like you, who's flying by the seat of his pants. So tell us about your new business and that.
Well, let's go. First, I am now the owner of Passionate Words Editing Services. You see where passion comes in. Yes. Passionate Words Editing Services. I do editing on different types of editing. So there is the proofreading up until the developmental editing. Proofreading, copywriting, copy editing, all that we do. We help authors with formatting, book formatting. If you just give it to me as a Word document, it has to be formatted for whatever book size and stuff like this. We also help you get it on Amazon, so you can get the Kindle version as well as the paperback version. So basically, I take aspiring authors from beginning to end in the process. We are a one-stop shop.
Good stuff. And you're enjoying this new business? How long is this?
Oh, yes, very much so. Fantastic. Very, very much so. So now to answer your question, I cannot be a pantser in this business.
No, you can't.
So I am totally working on organization when it comes to this business. I cannot. I mean, I just can't. I'm too busy. I'm way too busy to be doing to be a pantser. But as it relates to my characters, the characters have a life of their own. Yeah. And I had, when in the beta stage, I had someone reading the characters, the characters and their chapters. And the girl looked at me, she says, I hate Raine. And I was I honestly, at first I got a little offended. Like, how you mean? Because I thought she meant that my writing was bad. And she said, no, 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 you misinterpreted what I said. I said, I never said the writing is bad. In fact, I love your writing. You've created a whole character, a complete
Right.
character,
Gotcha.
somebody who has a depth to them. And this is why I hate him. Because, they literally said to me, I want you to give him every single STD there is on the planet at the same time. And I'm like, that's not practical. You can't. And she said, I don't care. I want you to kill his ass. And I'm like,
my goodness gracious, that's pretty vicious. That is very vicious. Now, what's very funny, Robert, is I was chatting with one of our other authors before the show started, and he better be laughing in his little box right now, because I said, we have 3 authors on every week, and I don't think that I could have possibly planned to have 3 more different books this week than I did. So I challenged our next author and said, our next author is Richard Marks, whose book, and you will see our viewers here, Rise to the Sun, 7 Footsteps and 7 Prayers for Getting Out of Hell. And I challenged Richard. I said, Richard, you're coming after Robert and his book. Are you up for the challenge? And Richard said, I am ready. So Richard Marks, with 7 Footsteps and 7 Prayers for Getting Out of Hell, and who is also quite the poet, and it's filled with poetry as well. Welcome to our show, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. It was good to hear you, Robert, and it's good to see you online with us, Lisa.
I am so thrilled we're all here together, as different as we might be at all. So Richard, tell us about your book and how this got started. I'm thinking a very different route than Robert's.
Well, there's a common theme, but we did it very differently, possibly. So even though it's a healing journey of a book and it's spiritually motivated, the theme is really freedom. And I don't know if, Robert, you want to talk about that, but when I talk about the book and describe it, and really what the journey part of the book is the journey out of hell, which is on the cover, and the word prayers is on the cover. So people think it's a religious book, but freedom occurs in religion. I guess it occurs in characters like yours, Robert.
Yeah.
Where you say you paint them into a corner and they have to get out. I completely understand that, except the problem is with my writing, it's nonfiction, so it's real people who have to get out.
Right.
And that's why it's a healing book. It's meant for people who are feeling that they're trapped or can't get out. And just like you and your writing, I'll make a parallel here. I feel we can get out, because if I didn't feel we could get out of all this hell that we're in, I wouldn't be able to write a book that says we can.
And I thank you that you did write a book that says you can.
Yeah, makes sense.
So I feel I'm a positive person. So loving that we can.
May I share an image with you?
Please do.
Here, we'll do a quick image share, because I think this would be interesting. I may have to turn off. Hold on. Zoom is tricky, but give me a moment.
Sure. We'll get there.
It's just how it is. I think we have to turn our virtual background off.
Oh, is that going to do it? Okay.
We can screen share.
You're teaching me something here.
Yep.
Oh, no.
Can you see my screen? No.
I can. I can see your entire screen.
That's okay.
But I do see the image. Absolutely.
Oh.
There we go. That's good.
Sorry that it's not the full screen. It might look a little primitive, but in this book, one of the things I love about writing is that I love art and music, and I think they belong with words. And there's a rhythm to words, but there's also an action when we activate them through our voices and through singing, and it's something we can share. Whereas just reading words to me is only sort of a part of what writing is.
Yes.
And so in this book, museums were very generous, I think partly because it was a nonprofit publisher, but partly too that it has a spiritual motivation
Mm-hmm.
to help heal people. And this painting, if you can see it,
Yes.
is
Yes.
this man facing this tornado. And it's just one of the 22 paintings. It's one I happen to love. It's what I would call almost American Gothic
Mm-hmm.
in style. And in the book too, I tried to create space on the pages by putting some quotes and some captions and leaving space for the readers so that they don't feel trapped in the stories. And that was important to me too, that the essence of freedom, again, is not just in what I have to say, but in how the reader experiences the journey of reading. So there's freedom in an experience of reading here by having artwork and prayers and sometimes even empty pages.
Yes. I
So
am
it's,
so delighted the way you are describing the reading of a book as a visual experience along with a textual experience. I am
Yes.
so about white space and layout. And I mentioned to you, Richard, that when you sent me a copy of your book, the first thing I did when I thumbed through is I loved the layout. It was just such a feast for my eyes, and I was able to rest on the pages as you just described beautifully.
so here, for example, in the layout, here's the end of a chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Ends with a prayer, which has lots of space on that page.
Yes.
We can just talk from a writer's point of view here, layout. And then the next chapter begins here with the big goodbye. And again, there's lots of space. And then even here, there's lots of space. So it doesn't, the intention was to give the reader time to pause, time to think,
Oh, love.
time to breathe, stop where you need to, because that's part of healing, I suppose, is to stop and think. And my editor said to me, you know, Richard, one thing is going to happen when people read your book and they're going to have to stop and think. That's what's going to happen.
Yes.
You're not just rushing them through an amazing plot. You're taking them on something where they're going to have to stop and think. And I was like, good,
Oh,
because I don't want to think for the reader. And space is one of the devices for doing that.
beautiful.
I will
Beautiful.
stop the screen share there.
Oh, I am so glad you said all of this. It's something that I so feel in my heart and love when I see it depicted on the page. So thank you for that. And what an inspiration for other writers out there who are saying to themselves right now, I want that for my book. I want
Yes.
people to
Yes.
stop and pause.
And,
Yes.
and
I love it.
I'll just jump in there really quick just to say that, you know, it's extra work, but it's good work, meaning one has to pick the art. I had to pick 3 times the amount, just like the cover, which is sitting behind me,
Mhm.
was inspired by a Nina Simone album from Here Comes the Sun from around 1976. And so I didn't copy it, but it's absolutely inspired. And the way I found the inspiration even for the cover was to look at music albums, because some of the greatest artwork and layout design pre-internet especially was on vinyl, was on album
Absolutely.
covers. And if you want to get inspired by art, you can look in art books. I went to all the museums for the paintings, found out where the rights were, asked them. Every single museum allowed me the rights to republish the paintings for free.
Oh my gosh, what a gift. What a
Yeah,
gift.
uh, and the artwork here too. It's inspired by something that Nina Simone actually painted this originally in watercolor.
Oh, oh, beautiful. So tell us a little bit about what you do besides write visually and textually beautiful books. Tell us about you.
Well, the writing journey, I'll keep with the writing journey theme here, has taken me on a new journey. So when I began this book, it was to move out of traditional media.
Mm-hmm.
The first part of my life was in mainstream traditional but high quality media, National Geographic and CNN. So I was a journalist. So again, like unlike Robert, I write very logically and very journalistically, and I want to, you know, I hide in that. And the next thing my editor kept saying to me, because she was a great editor, kept saying, we need more Richard here. need more of you. We need you to write your stories, not just Stephanie Larkin's story or Lisa's story in an interview, because that was always interesting to me. But I had to let my own voice come through too.
Mhm.
And so to answer your question, I've gone from traditional media to helping work on environmental and clean energy communications, which was media for the planet, for the
Mhm.
earth, for 10 years now, to spiritual media.
Oh, what a journey.
So it's a chapter. Yeah, it's a long, it brought me, writing brought me back into media. I felt like I had drifted way out there, like very far away from my real love. And my real, what I love is writing and music and media and art and how they all connect. And I got very far away from that because I lived in Washington, D.C., and that's not how it goes there. Not a, not an arty place by virtue, although the museums have their place. But so getting back into writing and media has been exceptionally important. And the spiritual part is just accepting that that's what I feel we and I can contribute right now.
And getting out of Washington, D.C., I presume also,
I,
huh?
I changed my number this week from 202 to 212.
Oh,
And I
212. Look at you.
got a 212 mobile number. That's a sign.
That you're here. You're back.
And I have not changed my number since 2005 when I first moved to Washington. So I finally made the break.
Oh, well, as a New Yorker who never left, I welcome you back.
Thank you.
And a 212. I'm glad you mentioned that. It is possible to get a 212 number nowadays.
It was an act of God. I'm just, the people in the T-Mobile were like, oh my God, we haven't seen this happen before.
Really?
Someone gave up a 212 number.
Who?
But for in New York, one thing that always worried me, I want to say this to other writers, I always worried that like New York is not what I would call a hub of spirituality because it's so corporate and it's so driven by success and by status and by your job. And I've seen healers come into New York, but inevitably they leave. They go to little, small, beautiful places where there's trees and rivers, that kind of thing. But I'm finding that our cities and people are craving more time with themselves to be spiritual. COVID has definitely brought that out. So I'm glad, awful kind of irony that my book on healing came out right when COVID hit, and that we have all had to pause and stop and think and hopefully become a little bit more spiritually directed.
Oh, I'm so glad too. And yes, there are those things that certainly I'm a silver lining person. So COVID is a horrible thing and has caused such anguish and grief. But there are things that it has brought about, like time and reflection. And
Somebody told me it's very interesting, and I agree because I'm interested in youth, talking and working with youth, or even people like us talking about and working with youth, and that they haven't had this experience of being home for
mm,
5 months solid, or not being on their cell phone the whole time and actually being like having family time or quiet time, not being in school, like graduating at home, all these things that happened in the last 6 months or 8 months were not in the experience of this generation yet. Now they've had it.
mm,
It's restored something old fashioned
yeah,
because they were born with a phone in their hand,
they absolutely were. And this
That's
is
very
a
true.
very different world.
right? So everyone had to not just pause, but actually be together and live together and talk to each other and eat together. And it's so basic, but what's interesting about it being so basic is that this generation sped up so quickly through technology that I had that experience because I'm 51, but people 1/4 of that age, they haven't had it yet, and now they have. So 10 and 12 and 15-year-olds will remember this year.
Well, I think we'll all remember this year. And I'm glad that you're putting a nice way of looking at it so we can remember it for the good things that came about. And let's hope we can retain the good things while also being healthy. That's the goal.
Yeah, I mean, even for the other authors, if I don't just say one quick thing, I noticed that in beginning of COVID, you know, we all know when there's a disaster, everyone throws a fundraiser on TV. Elton John shows up and Celine Dion shows up and everyone shows up. But this year, everybody showed up, and it went on for months and months and months and months solid
Yes.
of everybody singing on Zoom.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So like these 4 squares we're in, everyone started to sing songs. They started to perform almost for each other and bring hope and love to each other. It's still happening.
Richard, thank you.
The free things like you're doing, Stephanie, I'll give you lots of credit. Bringing artists together to open their hearts on a world stage is so important right now, because what we're doing is opening up to each other. We're not selling, we're opening.
You're right. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. My gosh, you're making my day. Absolutely. And you were speaking about sharing your essence and your story. Well, our third author today, Lisa Strahs-Lorenc, has been with us before with her book on pancreatic cancer. This new book, which just came out on the 10th anniversary of her original book, is Pancreatic Cancer, Families Move On. And what a testament to the resilience of love and human spirit. And I am so absolutely thrilled, Lisa, that you wrote this book and that you're here to share this book with us, because I know that it was, certainly it's not a straight up trajectory, and not just for you who went through this, but for the families involved in the project. So I'm so thrilled that this is in print and that you are here with us today. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Stephanie. It's really nice to be here back again, even if it's on technology, which sometimes works and sometimes doesn't work.
I know. Last time you and I were sitting on a couch together.
That's right. That's right. Hello to my fellow authors. I do think we have a lot in common. Absolutely. I think that the journey that we each talk about and our passions, it's absolutely the exact same. This passion is really about uplifting people's lives. Most of the people in my book have lost loved ones to pancreatic cancer, and we all know recently people have died of pancreatic cancer, including Chief Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And so the issue is a huge one. But if you go and look around, you see all the people who have lost loved ones, period. And so the journey of grieving and believing in life after is what I really focus on. And each of us go through that journey differently, and each of us experience that love that, you know, moves us to go on with our lives. So the beginning book that Stephanie mentioned, and that was Pancreatic Cancer, Families Move On, had 12 contributors throughout the United States. And it was the, as I said, September 3rd, 2010. Where that was published. And I was really proud that contributors had been so forthcoming in talking about the illness, talking about overcoming, you know, what was happening, and, you know, learning what to do to support their loved ones. And then I said, as time went on, I kept in contact with every single one of them. I said, you know, it's time to now see what we're doing and how our lives have changed. And let me just go back and say that my husband died on January 30th, 2009 of pancreatic cancer. And it was such a shock, and it really just changed our lives completely. But what has happened for all of us in the 10 years that I've known each of the people in that book is that we've all gone through our journey differently. We've all tried to figure out how we can now live our lives. And we all know that our loved ones would want us to move on with our lives. And that became the theme of the following book, Families Move On. And so out of that, and by the way, I had 4 survivors in that book, which is pretty amazing. Wow. I have of pancreatic cancer, that's really amazing. And I have 1 survivor who still is around after 12 years.
Oh my God.
Not easy, but so 12 people, 12 families out of the original 20 decide to contribute to the second book. And what I did was I broke down our lives to, memories and loss, and then moving on. So the first year, and of course, all of our firsts, and the challenges of dealing with your first birthday, your first anniversary, first holiday, all those things that we all know we need to deal with. And then the second year, and how we started now coming out of our cocoon, which is why that book looks like a butterfly. And then going into 5 years and seeing how you start making changes. People got married, people had children, grandchildren, people, decide to go back to school. There were so many changes that they decided it is time to go on with our lives. And then looking at 10 years. And so each of the chapters really illustrates that we each decide how we go through this journey. We have ups and downs, but in the end, and I have reviews, of course, of what our experiences were, and as we look back, how we feel about what we went through, and how our lives have changed in so many ways that we never would have dreamed, and that resilience and that hope, and that ultimate faith that life is wonderful, and that it's not exactly the way we would have thought, but it is a beautiful life, and that we're so grateful for the opportunity to live and to enjoy as our loved ones would want us to.
Oh, what a great message of hope that is.
Yeah. And with what we have now, with all the people who have loved ones, I look at them and I look at the grief process. And again, all of us go through this differently. But my book is a testament that life is one to celebrate. And that if you can allow yourself to embrace change, and of course, all of us have had to go through a lot of change in our lives now, but we need to be flexible. We need to, allow whatever happens to us and say, this is our next step. This is our next chapter. And that's how I see it. And the book is a really hopeful. I had 2 people give it as birthday presents. And I think that's really interesting. One, because her friend lost her husband to prostate cancer. And she said, I want to celebrate you. And I want to show that you do have a life after this. And that was the first one. And the second person just gave it to somebody who, it was lung cancer, it was a cancer. And this was a couple years already, and wanted that person to know that there are many families who have been in his position, and that we are role models and a support system, of course, to him. So, that's just an example. In the end, obviously, I want this to benefit individuals, but the reality is that I've done this for all proceeds to go Lustgarten Foundation. The Lustgarten Foundation here on Long Island is the largest private funder of pancreatic cancer research. They're doing amazing work. I've spoken to scientists. They're trying to figure out, that particular tumor and how it replicates. And pancreatic cancer is different. Early detection, of course, treatment, and then eventual cure. And it's just a really tough cancer. So I feel like the book has, a wider appeal. Though, of course, the proceeds do go to, a cause that I'm very passionate about. But it also has, I see it going to funeral homes. I see it going to hospitals. I see it going to bereavement groups and hospice facilities and, many other locations that really could support people as they go through this process. And again, that journey is an individual one, but it is, it is our life. And it is the opportunity to fully live no matter what has happened and no matter what we have to overcome.
Oh.
So that's my message.
Oh my gosh. And what a message of hope that is. That their life is worth living.
It is.
Life is absolutely worth living. Lisa, I love what you said about flexibility. That is so important in your book, but I think it's become so important to all of us in light of what's gone on.
Yes.
And the flexibility that people are showing, along with the resilience and the hope, but you do have to be flexible because you don't know what tomorrow brings.
That's right. I'm an excellent example, by the way. I've had many jobs, and I just started a new business. Now, who starts a new business on July 6th of this year?
I didn't know.
I do, Stephanie. You know, I have a workforce development background, having grown up and lived on Long Island all my life. And I really feel that there are many opportunities that people who are seeking employment really don't know about. And I am that open door person. I can open doors for people, and not only students and graduates, but people who are unemployed, people who are seeking job change, people who just don't even know what they should be when they grow up. And as a career counselor, I saw that many times. So I finally pigeonholed what was needed here. And that was an opportunity for people to really communicate with each other. So companies to be able to say, this is who I am, this is what I need, this is what I do. And those other people are seeking, hey, what's out there on Long Island? What kind of opportunities are there? So I started this on a whim, and I enjoy it. I believe in it. And, you know, we'll see where it goes. But again, you know, I'll launch a book on September 3rd, 2020. I'll launch a business on July 6th. And again, I tell people, just look at the opportunities. Don't pigeonhole yourself in one area. There's so many things you could do, and embrace. This is the time. We've all said it. This is the time where we need to embrace our creative talents and many other, you know, opportunities of who we are and our attributes that maybe we haven't really had time, and we do now, to focus on. So,
You know, you are so right in looking at this time, not as, you know, so many people, the lost year, you know, that nothing got accomplished. Well, I mean, lots of things got accomplished in this year. Just right there with you with a new business and a new book. And Robert and Richard have had so many things. We've had so many things. 2020 was not a lost time, but you went one step further in that we need to look at the opportunity. And Richard said that same thing about the time we have, that we have time now to be together and spend in a way that we're not on screens or we're not rushing. And there are so many ways that what has happened has afforded us the chance to pivot in
yes.
our lives.
Yes. Yes. Can I just mention my website, just because the website is really lovely. It outlines, of course, you know, about the book. It outlines me as an author, and of course where to purchase it as well. And 50% of the profits, if you go through me, go straight to Lustgarten Foundation. And there you go.
Great.
It's, yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's familiesmoveon.com. Yes, thank you.
You know, I definitely want to make sure people know about familiesmoveon.com, especially since the proceeds of the book are going to Lustgarten, which is doing such tremendous work here
It is, Stephanie.
in New York and in the world. You know,
It is.
you know, these things cost money.
Yes.
Yes.
These things cost money. Well, you know, the three of you are very different books, but all with the same goals. And I love your goals with your books and how you complement each other, even if you went about it in very, very different ways.
Yes, freedom is really important, and me and Richard and I definitely came at freedom on a different level. But then having Lisa talk about pancreatic cancer and moving on, there's a different sense of freedom in that as well. So I definitely see it. You know, it was awesome being here and listening to the different ways that we could express freedom, especially in this year that has been so challenging for everybody.
And I'm so glad you used the word freedom, because I think so many times people think that they are being put into a box, but many times I always think that everyone's biggest enemy in this world is truly themselves.
Agreed.
Agreed. Agreed.
I'll throw something in there. The publisher and the editors that I worked with, you know, they want to look for a big idea for a writer. So I guess it was the TED Talk that came up with that phrase, like the big idea. But you have to have a single big idea sometimes, and we all each have one. And for me, the big idea for this book, which I didn't realize was a big idea, was that before we try to fix everything and find opportunity and do everything, fix everything, because that's what I was doing before in the environmental field. Trying to fix the planet, fix the ocean, fix the air, fix our clean energy problems. It was like, have we fixed it? We haven't fixed it. Nothing, it's getting diving. It's worse and worse all the time. And that's the problem. And so the way that we see the world is freedom. The way that we look out and look at things. And it takes time to set the way we've looked at things. You said it a second ago, or a minute ago, Stephanie, about taking this time, but the goal is not just to do one more thing. The
No.
goal is to see something in a very different way. I think a lot of writing, especially when it's purpose-driven writing to help people, is all about how we see.
And seizing the moment, looking at
Yes.
this time in your life as an amazing opportunity, and to take that freedom that you've both mentioned and use it to the best of our abilities and lives. That should invigorate us and make us feel like the world is our oyster and we have so many challenges, but look at what we also have. We have, it's all the antithesis. We have something that we can grab and say, hey, I want to do this. I can do it. I can try it. And what's the worst that happens? I love that.
Well, and
Fail
also,
at something, so I don't make $1 million. Okay, that's all right. People are so afraid of being out of their comfort zone. And all they need to see is that look at what benefits you'll have if they just leave that just for a little while and see what they can embrace and see the new life that they can have. And, again, it takes time and it is those steps. But once you're there, you look back and say, wow, I can't believe I did that.
Yeah.
You are so
Robert, are you inspired by how people date online?
Let's say not officially, but unofficially, because I did date a lot online over the past couple of years. So
It's kind of an
inspiration.
opportunity at the moment during COVID.
Well, yeah, but I mean, and for sure. I mean, I mean, you can't touch people right now. At least you shouldn't.
That makes it more erotic, right?
Well,
Technically.
this is the thing. We have the other two people in this call are women. Where is your biggest erogenous zone?
Your mind.
Heart.
It's your mind.
It's your mind.
It's your mind.
Absolutely.
It's your mind.
It is, it's I think.
Touch a woman's mind and everything else opens up. You know what I'm saying? So and that's what I learned as an erotic poet. And so really and truly I've seduced and flirted with women across the world with my poetry and with my books. And I haven't seen them in person, haven't touched them in person, but when I speak, they get wet.
I hope it's healing people.
Well, yes, it is. I mean, this is the thing. I mean, and the 3 books actually do have healing as another tie that binds them. Because even although this book is erotic in nature, it goes to a point where there's healing within. The main character has to have a healing in himself. He has to come to a place of deciding if he's going to continue to be what we call in Barbados a village ram, or just somebody who is constantly promiscuous, or is he going to come to a place of maturity and deciding, okay, he's gotten this woman pregnant, what's he going to do about it, and such. In the midst of that as well, there are several different mini stories or threads, and other people get healing within it. There's, Jasmine has to have a bit of healing too, because she's gotten pregnant. She didn't plan on getting pregnant. She has to decide whether she's keeping the baby. I mean, and basically all of it boils down to freedom and the, I guess you could say, the consequences of freedom, healing that has to take place. I will say one more thing, that as a poet, yes, I like to see people get aroused with my work, but I link a lot of spirituality and with spirituality with sexuality in my usual work, not just within the novel itself. I don't think I probably didn't put it in the novel, but I do have it in most of my other work. Sex and spirit are very much linked, and in my worldview is the same energy. And therefore, when I speak to somebody, yes, I'm wanting you to get a rose, but ultimately there is a healing involved. There's a lot of pain and hurt and abuse that is centered around sex, especially for women. And what I do with my work, the other business that I run is called the Erotic Empire, and with that, that's the brand under which the books are sold.
Gotcha.
And with that, the goal is to produce and give a platform where women especially can be feminine, feel seductive in a safe environment without feeling that they are demeaned or are dehumanized or objectified in any way.
Well, I think that if our viewers want to find healing and positivity and resilience, I want to make sure that they all know where your websites are so that they can find out more. Robert Gibson is over at passionpoet.com. He's down in Barbados. Don't be jealous that he has a much better view than any of us today, but please visit him at passionpoet.com. Richard Marks, risetothesun.com. You can't miss it with that absolutely stunning sun on the cover. And I know that I believe, did the audiobook just get released for this as well?
You'll be finding it on Amazon, Apple, and Audible in November.
Fantastic, in November. Well, that's just right around the corner.
Yes.
So you can read the book, which is a feast for the eyes. So even if you decide to get the audiobook so you can be listening in your car while you're exercising, I would ask you to please also get the book, because the book is a feast for the eyes that I can't imagine you'd want to miss out on.
The book also has music in it.
Oh, well, hey.
Oh.
I'm all for music. You know that, Richard. I'm all about music and art.
So we have a beautiful audio track as well.
Oh, fantastic. I love that. And please do visit familiesmoveon.com. What an absolute gem of stories of hope and resilience, and yes, moving on, because life is meant to be lived every single day. So if you too are wanting to live the rest of 2020 and beyond, because this is not a wash of a year. This is a year for maybe us to sit and look back and reflect. I gave you 3 great places to get started on that journey. So Lisa and Robert and Richard, I can't thank you enough for joining us today.
Can't thank you enough for having us, Stephanie. It's so great to see you again.
Thanks so much.
This was fun.
And when
This was fun.
Best to Richard and Robert, best to both of you.
And when
Thanks,
your next
same to
books
you.
come out, please join us again. Thanks for having us. Thanks for joining us on Between the Covers. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're an author who would be interested in appearing on our show, or perhaps you're a member of a book club, we do host book clubs as well, please visit betweenthecoverstv.com. By the way, at betweenthecoverstv.com, you can watch past episodes in addition to learning more about our authors and guests. So sign up there if you would like to be a guest on the show yourself. And if you have some books that you would like to get written or published, visit redpenguinbooks.com. Thanks so much for joining us.